Welcome back, Cat 5 class. Today we're going to cover Chapter 4, Title Blocks and Viewports. Now before I start, I need to make a correction. On the syllabus, I called this Chapter 3, Part 2. And that would be correct if we were using the old textbook. So if we take a look at the old syllabus, my mistake, the current syllabus, you can see that I'm calling this Chapter 3, Part 2. In our last handout, we covered Part 1. So I do need to make a correction. This should be Chapter 4. In the old textbook, it was Chapter 3. Now, it just happens that these problems that you see here are in the back of Chapter 3 and in the back of Chapter 4 if you have one of the newer textbooks. Okay, so problem 340, back of Chapter 3. Is also found in Chapter 4, and it's labeled as Problem 4-2. Okay, so once again, you will find this in the back of Chapter 3 as Problem 3-40, and Problem 4-2 in the back of Chapter 4, and Problem 4-3, back of Chapter 4, is the same as Problem 3-41. Okay, so you'll find them in the back of both chapters, Chapter 3 and 4. But that's okay. I'm going to provide you with this handout for your next assignment. And we're going to do the same thing as the last handout. We're going to complete the 3 views. And I will provide you with the AutoCAD files. Okay, so AutoCAD files will be provided. You do have the option of doing this from scratch on your own if you feel confident enough on your skills in AutoCAD. All right, so let's continue with the lecture. Okay, so Chapter 4, Title Blocks and Viewports. So this assignment will be completed in AutoCAD. Okay, so title blocks and borders. Every engineering drawing should have both a border and a title block. So a border along the periphery of the page, a perimeter of the page, and a title block with information. Okay, so border defines the drawing area. Title block, actually I shouldn't have a space here, that's a typo. Title block, one word, gives pertinent information. Okay, the information that is included depends on the drawing type, field of engineering, and your viewing audience. Okay, so what do you want to see in a title block? Okay, so things you want to see in a title block: name of the drafter, or the person in charge. It could be the engineer, the supervisor. So you may have your name as a drafter or your supervisor's name or a combination. Who checked it? So you always want to have somebody check your work, redline it. So in the classroom, I'm the checker, right? I get to check your work, redline it. The exception is I'm using yellow instead of red. Okay, so you'll hear checkers or supervisors refer to it as redlining. That means somebody's going to correct your drawing. Okay, you want to have in the title block school or company name and or logo of the company or school, the title of the part or the drawing. It can be, hey, it's a bracket or a mounting block, or it's an installation drawing. Okay, part name, part number. What material are you using? Are you using aluminum, steel, plastic, wood? Number of parts, how many do you need? Sheet number, number of sheets. So that's the total sheets. The scale of your part in the drawing, the date, and the revision. Okay, so let's take a look at examples of title blocks. So this is just stuff I found on the internet, took some screenshots. Okay, so once again, you want to have a name, right? So you want to have the name of the drafter, the engineer, and or supervisor, or a combination, right? Who checked it? Okay, so you always want somebody to check check your work, and also who approves it at the end. So somebody's got to approve the drawing for release. And think of a drawing as a contract. Okay, think of it as a contract. You're gonna have a few machine shops or metal forming shops. If this part is made out of aluminum or steel, hey, can you bid on this part? So you send them the drawing. And typically, the big companies, the Boeings, Northrop, Grumman, Airbus, and so on. Typically, they'll send out a copy of the drawings to at least 3 different shops so they can get a quote. Hey, how much will you do it for? I'll charge you $100 a part, $200 a part, and so on. So typically you'll go with the lowest bid, or the shop that you feel most confident with will actually complete the job in a timely manner and has a good track record, right, of producing good parts. Okay, so think of a drawing as a contract. Okay, also the name of the company or school and the logo, right? You want to have a title, galley installation. Okay, so the galley area, installation, drawing number. How many sheets are there total? There's a total of 2 sheets. So the first sheet will be 1 of 2, and the second sheet is 2 of 2. You always have to call out the total number of sheets, just in case there's a sheet missing. So if there's supposed to be 5 sheets and you only made prints of the first 4 sheets, well, if whoever's looking at your drawing says, hey, there's a total of 5, where's the 5th sheet, right? So this is a way to know how many sheets there are in total. Okay, you also want a revision, and I'll explain revisions in a later slide. Okay, here's another example. We have the company name or logo, the quantity required, how many of these parts are going to be machined or formed, what type of material is it. So here we have 6061 aluminum alloy. What type of finish do you want? Scale. So if you were to print this out, is a part in the drawing at full scale? Meaning if the length of the part measures 1 inch, it should print out 1 inch on the sheet. If your part doesn't fit inside of the sheet, then you might cut it in half, and you can use a scale of 1 to 2. And we'll talk more about scales as I demonstrate how to insert a title block and scale down or scale the drawing up to fit your title block. The sheet size. So A size is an 8.5 by 11 sheet. A B size is 11 by 17. Okay, you also want a date. Here are the initials of the person that either drew it or engineered the part. And in the good old days, you would provide a phone number or address of the company. Nowadays, you can just provide information on the company through the internet, right? A lot easier. Also, what type of projection are you using? So this is a third angle projection. You can actually see it here labeled third angle projection. So you always have to call out what type of projection are you using. Remember when we used Jack's mug shot? Okay, Jack, face the camera. Okay, turn right and step back, right? So third angle projection. And we also have first angle, which we're not going to use in this class. You also have to call out the units. So 99% of your drawings in mechanical drafting will either be millimeters or inches. It's rare, but sometimes you will combine the units. One good example is you'll make your entire drawing using inches, but it just happens that the thread of the hardware that you had to order only came in millimeters. Okay, so it's okay if you use a drawing all in inches, and the hardware that you were looking for only came in millimeters. So you can call that out in the drawing, that it's metric. Okay, and later on we're going to talk about tolerances. Okay, so anytime you dimension a drawing, you count the number of decimal places. And if it's, let's say it's 1.000 inches in length, then how much wiggle room can the machinist have? How much can they be off by? So you count the number of decimal places in the dimension. If it's 3 decimal places, you're going to use a tight tolerance. This is very tight, 0.001. That's a little too tight. So if this was inches, think of a human hair is about 0.004 inches. So this is really tight, unless this is meant to be in millimeters. Okay, so, but later on in a later chapter, we'll talk about, actually in the next chapter, we'll talk about dimensioning. And then a later chapter, we'll talk about how to apply tolerances. In other words, how much wiggle room can you give the machinist or whoever's forming the sheet metal, how much can they be off by? Because there's no such thing as a perfect length or perfect diameter hole. You always have to give them some wiggle room. And we'll talk more about this in a later chapter. All right, so I just wanted to give you some examples of what a title block looks like. All right, so in your textbook in chapter 4, the author walks you through how to create your own title block. If you want to create your own title block, go for it. I am going to provide you this one. So one of the other AutoCAD instructors from the past gave me a copy of their title block. And I also downloaded some of the AutoCAD templates that you can actually find in your AutoCAD software. And I'll demonstrate that in a few minutes. Okay, so once again, you have your border. So you have your sheet size. So this looks like 8.5 by 11. That's an A size. And you have your border and title block. And the lines on a border and title block are thicker than an object line. Okay, so be aware of that. Maybe around 0.90 in thickness and line weight. Okay, so let's talk about sheet sizes. Okay, your home printer typically prints in 2 sizes. A size, all of you should be familiar with 8.5 by 11 inches, right? That's your standard sheet size, A size. And typically your home printer, you can add a larger sheet, 11 by 17. Okay, we call that a B size. Okay, and then we have to go on to plotters to be able to print larger scale sheets. Okay, so if you're not familiar with plotters, here are what plotters look like. Okay, so plotters can have a length of 48 inches in length or even larger. Just got to pay more for it, right? Okay, so these plotters are about pretty much the height of a desk. Okay, so in the picture they may look small, but they're actually quite big. Okay, so they're just on this one, for example, this length here is again about 48 inches, about 4 feet, and it can go up to 60 inches and even larger. Okay, so these plotters, we do have some on campus. I don't know if they are connected to our network. Okay, so once you get into a C size, 17 by 22, then you're going to need a plotter. Then we have D size, 22 by 34 inches, and an E size, 34 by 44. Okay, so I want you to look at the pattern. There's a pattern here, 8.5 by 11. So for the next sheet size, you take the last number, drop it diagonally across, see 11. Then this number is just twice the first number. 8.5, you double it, that's 17. And then for sheet size C, you take the 17, okay, the large number, bring it across diagonally. So now the next sheet size is 17 by double the small number, 11 times 2, 22. Now we have 22, right? For D size, you go 22 diagonally across, 22. And 34 is just double 17. 2 times 17, 34. And for an E size, take the 34 diagonally. So it's a 34 by 44. 44 is just double 22. All right, so there's also larger sheet sizes. We have J sizes. We have like 36 by, I believe it's 48 or so. But you can go with custom-made sheet sizes. Actually, for one of our projects where we were creating wire harnesses, we had to go with the 15-foot long sheet size. So it was 36 by 15 feet long. So 36 inches by 15. Actually, thinking back to the plotter, some of these plotters are about 36 inches wide, 3 feet. So they go up to, I don't know how large they go to, but we have 3 feet, 36 or 48 or 60 inches, depending on the size plotter you want to purchase. Okay, so now for architecture, they use a different standard. Architecture, they start with 9 by 12. So if you are in the architectural world, keep in mind their standards are different. We're following the mechanical, American mechanical standards. And architecture, they use the American architecture standards, and they go 9 by 12, and then they repeat the same pattern. They bring the 12 down and so on, double the 9, 18. Okay, but we're not using architecture standards. We're following the mechanical standards. And we'll talk more about standards in a later chapter. All right, so here's your first problem. Okay, so problem 4-2 I'll use as an example, and I'll make a separate video on how to complete this problem, problem 4-2. If you're using the old textbook, it's problem 3-40, but you can also find it in the back of chapter 3 of your newer textbook. All right, so we're going to take this problem and we're going to add a title block and border. Okay, so I'm going to provide you a file with different sizes. Okay, so we have an A size tab, a B size, C size, D size, E size. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and attach a file with all these different sizes. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. Okay, so I have 2 of them I'm going to send you. Let's take a look at this one first. So this is an AutoCAD file. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open it. Okay, so this is the one that I got from one of the other AutoCAD instructors. And this is the one that the author, she walks you step by step on how to create your own title block and border and save it. Okay, if you want to walk through that exercise in chapter 4, you're welcome to. All right, so that's one title block that we can use. If you wanted to use this one, you can left mouse click and hold and copy all this. And I can right click, copy. Oh, I don't see copy on this, I'm blind. So let me go hit Control C. So I'm going to hit Control C on the keyboard. So Control and the letter C to copy, Control C. Then I'm going to go over to my problem, 3-40. Let me zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to hit Control V as in Victor, Control V to paste. And there's my title block and border. Ta-da! Now, I want you to notice that it dropped it in the default layer. We do have a layer called 0. It's just a default layer. So if you open up a new drawing from scratch, it has to have a layer, right? So you can start drawing. If you're not aware about layers, you're going to try and draw, but if there's no layers, then you won't be able to see your lines. So there has to be a layer, and that's the default that comes with AutoCAD. Default layer 0. Okay, so that's one option. You can use this title block and border if you like. Now, I forgot to mention, I'm going to make the assignment optional when it comes to title blocks and borders. Some of you are going to want to put your title block and border. I'm going to make it optional. If you don't want to place the title block and border, you don't have to. About maybe a third of you or half of you will choose to add a title block and border to make your drawing look more professional, right? And you're going to want to practice this. Now, the reason I'm not enforcing, even though Chapter 4 assignments requires a title block and border, I'm going to make it optional. And the reason is because when you go work for a company, they will already have this set up for you. They'll give you a file already set up with all the layers and line thicknesses and line types, and they'll provide you with a template with the title block and border. Okay, so that's why I'm making it optional. I'll leave it up to you if you want to add one. Okay, so let me hit undo a few times. Let's say I wanted to use something more professional, right? Okay, so I'm going to open up another title block. Oh, I spelled it. It should be one word. Title blocks, no space. So I'm also going to send you this AutoCAD file. I'm going to double click on it, which gives you a more professional looking title block. So this is an E size. Okay, so an E size. We go back, and E size is 34 by 44. And again, E, D, or C size, you typically want to print it out on a plotter. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so I want you to notice the tabs up here. So our first tab is our problem. Second tab is the title block and border that the textbook walks you through on how to create your own if you choose to create your own. And the third tab has the title blocks. Bunch of title blocks, so let's go down here to the bottom. So that's an E size. Then we have a slightly smaller one, D, C, B, so this is 11 by 17, and A, 8.5 by 11. Okay, so I want you to notice there's a difference between this title block and the one I showed you earlier, the simple looking one. Okay, so this one, if I click on it once, this is all joined as one. Okay, so this is a block. So the textbook does go over how to create a block. So you create all the lines, insert all the text, and then you save it as a block. I'm not going to show you how to create blocks in this lecture. I will show it to you on the next lecture. Okay, so this was created by someone and then saved as a template by using the command block, and we'll learn how to do that later on. All right, so I'm just going to right click copy. Let's see if I can copy this one. Nope, can't copy, so I'm going to hit Control C, the letter C to copy. I'm going to go back to my drawing. Then I'm going to hit Control V. Okay, so this is an A size, and notice it's too small. Okay, so this is an A size. Let me turn on snap mode. So I'm going to snap to the grid. Here's the bottom corner at 0, 0. Okay, obviously that's too small, right? Okay, so let's take a look at a B size. So let's go back to title blocks. So that was an A size. Let's go to a B size, see what a B size looks like. Select it, hit Control C to copy. Go back to your problem. Control V, right? Notice this is larger. And click. So that's a B size. Okay, let's go ahead and insert the others. Why not? It's good practice. Okay, let's go to a C size. Okay, so this is a C size. I'm going to select it, then hit Control C on the keyboard to copy. Go back to your drawing and Control V to paste. So you can see the different sizes. This is C size. All right, let's go to the next one. Let's go to the D size. Select it. Control C to copy, go back to your drawing, Control V and paste. And let's go back for the last one, the E size. Control C to copy and Control V as in Victor to paste. Okay, so you can see the different sizes, right? So E, D, C, B, and A. Okay, let me hit escape to deselect. one thing I do want you to notice is when we copy these title blocks over, it brought in a title block layer that we didn't have there before. Okay, so if I was to hide the title block layer, oh, I'm misclicking. Let me click away and try it again. Oh, it says locked. I can turn off the other ones, but I can't turn this one off. Oh, it's not giving me the option. This title block is not giving me the option. I can turn off the other ones. Okay, that's something I never noticed before. Okay, so once again, we do have a title block layer and it's not allowing me to turn it off. Let me see if I can freeze it. Nope. Can lock it? Nope. I guess it's because part of this block. Remember earlier we talked about blocks? Okay, so I was not able to turn them off. All right, so let's get rid of this E size, the larger one. I'm just going to delete it. And this D size, it's a little too big. Let's delete that one. Let me roll. Okay, C is a little too big. Delete it. And obviously A is too small, so I'll get rid of A and delete it, and I'll hang on to B. Okay, so this is the B size, 11 by 17. Okay, so now we don't have dimensions yet, but later on when we start dimensioning our drawing, we need to learn how to space out our views. And when it comes to spacing out views, you want to think of adding furniture to your first apartment, right? You just got your first apartment or your first home, and you're gonna have your first housewarming party. You wanna move things around, the furniture where it's functional, people can walk around the furniture, people can easily, or the room can easily handle traffic in and out and across the room. Okay, so think of setting up your drawing with the title block and border. Think of setting up your views as rearranging furniture. Okay, so what I can do is I can select my views and I can move them, right? Use the move command. Currently I have snap turned on, as you can see. And you want to center them. It's okay if you have extra space. And normally I would turn this off, or actually I would delete this because the part number and the name will be in the title block. Okay, so I can delete this and delete this one. Okay, so that's how you insert a title block and border in model space. Okay, so this is model space. And by the way, don't be afraid to spread out your views. Just make sure you do it horizontally, right? In this case, and this one, vertically. And later on, you will be moving them once you start adding your dimensions. Typically, dimensions you want to keep between the views. Once you start adding heights, lengths, depths, dimensions to each step, the widths, etc. Okay, so later on, we will be spacing out our views to add dimensions and also notes. So you have to put notes about how are you going to machine this? How are you going to label it with the part number? What type of material are you using? Are you going to paint this? Are you going to have some areas taped off before you paint? Okay, so you're going to put all this in your general notes. Okay, also when you machine the part, you want to remove any sharp edges, right? You don't want somebody to cut themselves when they're handling the part, or when you made it to another part, you don't want the sharp edges to scratch or damage the other part. So what we do is what is referred to as you break the edges. Okay, pretty much you just remove the sharp edges off of the part. If this is a machined part, for example, typically aluminum or steel. All right, so that's how you insert a title block. Okay, let's move on with the lecture. All right, so once again, I will provide you this file, title blocks, with the different sheet sizes. And you can also use the ones that are included in your AutoCAD license. Actually, let me go ahead and go over that. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to go to File, Open. So you can go open here, Open. And I'm going to go to the drop down here instead of .dwg for drawings, right? I can say show me DWTs, drawing templates. Don't panic when these go away, right? So it's going to filter out everything except drawing templates. So if I go to drawing templates, here are some of the drawing templates. So I have it in my student license, educational license. You may not have yours set up with should give me a preview. So these are set up already with layers, right? Oh, there's one. Okay, so there's one for architecture. I'm assuming this is manufacturing. I may be incorrect on this. So this is inches, I for inches, M for millimeters. So millimeters architecture. And I'm assuming this is mechanical. Okay, so there are some title blocks with the border that are already included. Let's see what other ones we have here. Oh, this one's empty. Nope, these are empty. Expecting to see more sheet sets. Okay, there are more. Okay, so it is manufacturing. Okay, so we have architectural, imperial, right? Inches or feet inches. That's the old school way of using the architectural units, feet inches. I think it's all now inches. Okay, architectural, metric, millimeters. Civil imperial, so inches or feet inches. Civil engineering, metric, millimeters, right? And we also have inches and millimeters for manufacturing or mechanical engineering. Okay, so you can open up these drawing templates similar to the one I'm sending you, right? Or uploading into Canvas. Let's go ahead and open one of them. I'll open up manufacturing imperial. I'll double click on it, open it up. Okay, it doesn't have layers set up, but it does have a layer for title block, as you can see. And this is a C size. Oh, it only comes in a C size. I rarely ever use a C size. I typically use a B, 11 by 17. And if I need more, a larger sheet, since I'm going to use a plotter, I'll go up to at least a D or an E size. Okay, so if I zoom in, you should be able to double click and enter title name, your name, and so on. So you should be able to just double click on the title block and change the value, contract number, date, etc. Okay, so we'll talk more about blocks later on. Okay, notice that this is on a sheet. It's like, where did that sheet come from? Well, we are in ANSI See Title Block tab. This is a layout tab. If we go to the model tab, notice how the background changes. You can start drawing if you like. Okay, so this is the model tab. And this is a layout tab. Okay, so if I go back to my drawing, problem 3-40, or my mistake is problem 4-2, right? If you're using the new textbook. Okay, so down here we have layout tabs. Okay, so you can place a title block and border in model space. So depending on who you work for, what company you work for, they may be okay with you putting a title block and border in model space. Others prefer that you put it on the actual sheet. Okay, so this is an A size. And this is a B size. Okay, so I'll leave it up to you if you want to go with the A size, 8.5 by 11. Okay, so notice the title block and border are on the sheet. Now something I want you to see is, if I double click inside the page, double click inside, looks like I'm already inside. Notice I can move the model. I can roll in, roll out, roll in, roll out. If I click outside, when I roll in, roll out, that's doing the whole thing. If we go inside, double click inside the sheet, Okay, so I know this is a little confusing, so let me take a minute and explain this to you. Okay, let me first start by going back to model space. And watch, I'm going to delete the title block and border. If your boss tells you, no, don't use title block and border in model space, we can tell we are in model space because we have the black background. I can delete that. If I go back to the sheet size, or my mistake, the layout where I have the sheet. Okay, notice we have the white background with the gray. Okay, so if I double click inside, I can roll in, roll out to change the scale. Okay, so what's the difference? Okay, so easiest way I can think of explaining this is your phone. Okay, so if I go to let me pick an iPhone or any smartphone, right? All right, so where's a good example? I'll use a simple one. Let's use this picture here. Okay, so if you buy a cover or a case for your smartphone, right? So here we have what appears to be, yep, a rubber black on black butterfly kiss hybrid. So there's a butterfly there, right? Okay, so this is your cover. So for our case, for AutoCAD, our cover is the title block and border. That's our cover. Okay. So once again, think of this as your cover. Let me go back to our drawing. Here we go. Okay, so the A size, 8.5 by 11. The title block and border is our cover. Now, if you go back to your phone and open a picture, so if you were to open up your pictures, you can zoom in and out, right? And you can crop your picture. Okay, so think of your model as the picture. Okay, so let's go back to AutoCAD. Okay, so think of your three views as the picture, right? So you turn on your phone has this fancy A-size title block and border, right? So you turn on your phone, you want to look at one of your pictures, and with your fingers you click inside and you can zoom in and zoom out and you can crop, etc. Okay. Now once you're done, you can turn off your phone. I'm going to turn it off. I can go back outside. I just double click outside, double click on the sheet, and there it is. And that picture, we can no longer zoom in or out or crop it because we're now on the rubber cover. Okay, see there? Okay, now let's say you wanted to add your name. Okay, let's say you wanted to add your name to your phone cover. So if we can go back and etch something on here, so we can scribe something, we maybe have something to scribe with, so you can etch your name on here or burn your name on here, right? Okay, or your initials. Okay, so same idea. So if we're going to put our name on the title block and border, imagine you're putting your initials or scribing your initials on the actual hardcover here, or the rubber cover or case. So let's go back. Okay, so if I'm going to add my name to this, so I'm going to add my name here. Okay, so I'm going to add some text. Make sure you click outside, right? You don't want to click inside. Okay, so now when we add text, okay, so I click on text. I'm going to place it here. And you can type in your name. You want to go with capital letters. If the text is too small or too large, you can always change the size here. Okay, right now it's at 0.2. Okay, so for if you're using American standards, inches, typically a text height is about 0.16 or 0.18. Okay, so if you're following the American National Standards, they recommend you use 0.16 for your text height. AutoCAD defaults to 0.18. Okay, just so you're aware of it. Notice here they have it at 0.200. That's actually quite large. Actually not that large, but we can go with 0.16 and enter. And your text now is a lot smaller, as you can see. And you can make changes to your text. If I, once again, oh, let me hit escape. I actually went inside my picture. They want to do that? Let me double click outside. There it is. All right, so you can always take your text and you can realign it. See up here? You can center it. You can have it go towards the right instead of the left and so on. So you can actually move your text around, okay? So I'll cover more of that later on. Okay, so as you can see, as I zoom in and out, there's your name. Now, if I double click inside the picture, so let's say you open up a picture. Let's say you open a picture, but you want to put your name on the picture, maybe your name at the bottom of the picture. This time we're not on the hard case, we're actually inside one of your pictures. You just took a snapshot, let's say of yourself on the mirror, and you want to put your name at the bottom. So if you can do that on your picture, that's what we're going to do in AutoCAD. Okay, so if I double click inside my picture, which is our three views, you can add text. Example, your name. And once you're done, click outside. So watch what happens. Look at your name here, and then you look at your name in the title block. If I double click in here, notice the last text we added was inserted in the picture or in the model space. Your name here was actually added to the title block and border or the case of your phone. Okay, so that's the difference. So see here your name. If I go back to the model space, I can click here model. There it is. There's the name I just added. Let me double click here on your name. What if I type in my name? My name. Click outside. So I changed it here to my name. Go back to the layout. There it is. It changed it here because it's part of the model, my name, right? Okay, so, and this is an A size sheet. Once you're done working inside, double click outside. If you're having trouble double clicking, there's this yellow box. That's a viewport. Let me just click outside the box. There it is. Another way to jump between model space and paper space is this button here. See, if I click on it, I'm back in model space. If I click on model, on this model button, click on it, I'm back on paper space. So now I can start writing text in the title block. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on. If this is a little confusing, I understand. I get more questions about title blocks and borders. How do I insert a title block and border? I'm gonna walk you through it in the assignments for each problem. Okay, so, and again, title blocks and borders, I'm gonna make it optional. You don't have to add them if you don't want to. All right, so let's go to layout number 2. So this one has the larger, this is an 8.5, my mistake, 11 by 17 B size, okay? Notice currently we're zooming into a picture on our phone, right? Same idea. Notice how this text here, your company name, is not moving. And that's because it's on the paper. Okay, so if I wanted to move this, your company name, let me go ahead and go back to paper space. Okay, so now we are in paper space. Now I can move. I can use the grips to move, right? If you want to move it to a different location, I can use the grips. All right, so if I wanted to move my name, I have to double click inside. So once again, you're looking at a picture in your phone. And now if you want to move this text, you have to be inside your picture or model space, right? And currently we are in model space. If I want to go back to paper space and move the text on paper, go back. And again, now you're sketching or etching or scribing on your phone cover. All right, so I know this is a little bit confusing at first, but I'm going to walk you through it step by step as we do the YouTube videos for the handout. Okay. All right, so let's continue on. Okay, so once again, select the title block and border, and you can hit Control-C to copy. Once you've selected the title block and border, Control-C, and then you can use Control-V to paste the title block and border. If you want to do it in model space, go for it. If you want to do it in layout with the sheet in the background, go for it. Make sure you go to the tab. Okay, so go to the layout tab if you want to add the title block and border on the sheet. All right, so let's continue on. Okay, we're going to talk about scales and viewports, but before I do, I want to show you how to change the actual size of the sheet. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back to AutoCAD. All right, so I have two layouts. When you first start off, there's only, I believe there's only one layout. You can keep adding layouts. In other words, you can keep adding sheets. Okay, you can add more sheets if you like. Okay, so you can even delete sheets. Okay, let's say I want to delete the second one. Like, are you sure? Yep. Okay, so I'm back down to one layout tab. Okay, so once again, I rarely use an A size. I like to go with the B, 11 by 17 or larger. I prefer not to use A. Don't want to use A, don't want to use C. Typically use B, D, or E, or sometimes a custom-made sheet when we're dealing with long electrical harnesses for vehicles. All right, so this is an A size. Let's say I wanted to make this sheet a B size, make it larger. Okay, so if you want to make this a larger sheet, okay, so I'm going to go to Layout, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to go to Page Setup Manager. It's almost like printing. And later on, we'll talk about printing. We can spend a whole hour on how to print. Okay, so Page Setup Manager. Okay, so currently we only have one layout. If you had more, it would be listed. Okay, and we're going to modify it. Notice right now it's 8.5 by 11. So I'm going to modify. Currently, I don't have anything connected as far as a plotter or a printer. Okay, so currently I'm not connected to any printers or plotters. Okay, so if you're just connected to one of your one of your home printers, okay, typically you'll be limited on what sizes are available to print. Let's see, let me go to, oh yeah, don't have mine listed here. Okay, so if you're connected to your personal printer at home, typically you wouldn't see all these options. You would have 8.5 by 11 letter size, legal size 8.5 by 14, and I think the other one is ledger size 11 by 17. I don't see 11 by 17 down here. That's okay. All right, so now if you were to go to a plotter, you would have all these options. So if you're hooked up to one of those large plotters, you can go ANSI A size. So ANSI stands for American National Standards Institute. They came up with this standard. A size is 11 by 8.5 or 8.5 by 11. Okay, and I want you to notice that I was looking for more architecture. Architecture doesn't have an A size here listed. Let me see if I have an option to go to a plotter. Okay, we have ePlot. So I'm trying to trick my computer to into thinking that we're connected to a plotter. Let's see if I can outsmart my computer. I typically lose when I try this. So I went to ePlot. Okay, it actually gives me more options. Yep, gives me a lot more options, as you can see, right? Okay, so all these letters that you see here, these are the standards. So these are the ISO standards, or International Standards Organization. These are French standards. So the big companies like Airbus and other European countries use the International Standards Organization standards. Okay, and they have their sheet sizes. And we have the architecture sheet sizes. Oh, there it is. I was looking for architecture A size. There it is, 9 by 12. Okay, so they're slightly different than what we use in mechanical drafting. So if we go to ANSI, American National Standard Institute, okay, an A size is 8.5 by 11, a B size 11 by 17, C size, and so on. Okay, so let's say I wanted to increase it to 11 by 17. Okay, so I can pick an ANSI standard, an ISO standard. Again, we're not using architectural, so these are for the architectural standards, ARCH, architectural standards. Okay, so we're going to either use ANSI, American National Standards Institute, or ISO, the International Standards Organization out of France. So I'll just stick with the ANSI B size 11 by 17. Okay, ANSI 11 by 17. Okay, and you're going to see the sheet change in size. Okay, so right now we have 8.5 by 11 A size. Now we're moving up to a B size. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to close. And there's the B size. As you can see, that's a larger sheet, 11 by 17 now. Okay, so this is no longer A size. So now this title block and border is too small. It's just way too small. Let's see if I can move this. Let me hit undo. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move it. So obviously this cover for your phone, right, is too small. So if we go back to the picture of the cover, got to make sure you use the right cover size, right? So if you have the large iPhone, order the large cover. If you have the smaller iPhone, you want to order the small one, right? So same idea. Okay, so this cover is too small for my large iPhone screen, right? So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. And I'm going to go to the title blocks file that I emailed you and also placed on into Canvas. So let's go to the B size. There it is, the B size. So I'm going to select it, Control C to copy, go back to my drawing, and Control V and paste it. Make sure you are on paper, right? We want to be on paper. If you don't see paper, click on it. Click on the word model to go back to paper space. Okay, and just eyeball it. You want to go inside these dashed lines. That represents the plotting area or the border of the plotting. Okay, there it is. Okay, so now you're thinking, hey, teacher, this is too big for our... Oh, let me deselect. This is too big for our 3 views here, right? For our picture. That's okay. So I'm going to double click inside. And now we're going to talk about viewports. See this yellow line? Okay, we haven't inserted a viewport layer, but that's okay. Okay, let's go ahead and add a viewports layer. So I'm going to go in here, layer properties, and I'm going to add a new layer. Okay, so if you want to add a new layer, you're going to go here. If you want to use the default 0, go for it. All right, so I'm going to add a new one and I'm going to call it viewport. When you're typing in a name, there's certain things you can use, like symbols. You may not be able to use spaces, so keep the name of the layer simple. Avoid using symbols or spaces, or else it may reject the name you give it. Okay, so I'm going to keep it simple, viewport, and then click away. Okay, and I'm going to make my viewport, you know what, I'll make it blue because I want you guys to be able to see viewports. Okay, so there's viewports. I'll keep it blue, continuous. You know, I'm going to make it thick so you guys can see it. Normally I wouldn't change the line weight on a viewport, because in the end, you typically tend to turn them off. Let me make it a 0.70, just so we can see them. All right, so we have a viewports layer. Okay, so currently this is in the default layer. So this yellow viewport, I'll explain what viewports are in a minute. Okay, let me go back to Paperspace. Okay, so I'm back in Paperspace. We can just double click outside. So this is a viewport. Currently is in the 0 layer. If you want to use the 0 layer, go for it. I'm going to move it to the viewport layer that I just created. And there it is. You can see it. Hit escape to deselect. Okay, so that's my viewport. Okay, so what's a viewport? Okay, let's go back to the notes. Okay, so this is a viewport. And think of a viewport as making a montage of pictures on a PowerPoint presentation or on your screen, right? So I don't know if they're pretty sure there's some type of software that does that. I'm not into that, or aware of that. So if you open up your pictures and you can somehow make a montage of pictures. So when you turn on your phone, you see a montage of family pictures and friends and so on, right? Or pictures of yourself, selfies, right? Okay, so think of viewports as a picture frame. So let's go back. And I can adjust it. So I can say, hey, I'm going to fill up the whole screen on my phone with this viewport. There it is. So you can use the grips. Okay, and I'm going to hit escape to deselect. Okay, so I can't see my viewport very well because I overlapped it with let me move my title block. I'm going to go ahead and move this. So there's the viewport in the background, as you can see, right? You can see it. Now let's make it a little bit smaller so it doesn't overlap. We can actually see it. Okay, let's go ahead and move our title block and border back into place. Just eyeball it. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and move my viewport. I accidentally selected the viewport when moving. That's all right. There it is. Okay, so there's my viewport shown in blue. All right, so now teacher, the views are too small. Okay, so we're going to go into our viewport. Double click inside of our viewport. And I want you to notice the scale. Right now it's around half scale. So right now it's at half size. It's not at full size. Okay, so watch what happens when I roll the wheel. Look, keep an eye on the scale here. Watch what happens. Notice it's increasing. Now it's at a 2.2 scale, 1.4, and so on. So we can roll the wheel and change the scale. So you double click inside the viewport. You can roll in and out, change the scale, as you can see. If you double click outside, you're back on Paperspace. Okay, so let's double click inside the viewport. Okay, so the blue frame, double click. And we can go to the drop down here and say, hey, I want full 1:1 scale. So that's full scale, the actual size. So go 1:1, that's full scale. Notice it says 1:1 now. I can now pan over and organize it. And there it is, right? Let me get rid of this name, don't need it. Oh, your name here is on Paperspace. See how I can't move it? Now double click outside once it's positioned. Let me take your name and move it to the correct spot right there. I should center it, but I'm not going to spend time on this video showing you how to center it. I'll do it on the next one. Hit escape to deselect. Okay, so that's a viewport. You can create multiple viewports if you like. You can adjust your viewport using the grips. so you can see. Okay, let me hit escape to deselect. Okay, so how do you insert your own viewport? Okay, so let's say you wanted to insert your own viewport. Okay, so let's go back to the notes. Okay, before we insert a viewport, I forgot, let me go back to scale. I'm gonna turn on all the options on scale. Okay, so currently I don't have all the options. This is mostly for architectural, right? Architecture, you know, long buildings, big, tall buildings. You need to use a smaller scale. We're not going to be using these tiny scales that architectural students use or architects use. Okay, so we're going to add more scale options. Okay, so what we're going to do is to add all these extra scales, we're going to go to reset. Okay, so we're going to go to scales, we're going to reset and go metric and imperial scales. So don't just give me metric or imperials, give me all of them and it'll add more scale options. Okay, so we're going to go back to scale, hit the little downward arrow, go to customize, and we'll add more options. Okay, so let's go back to AutoCAD. Okay, so if I go to scale, well, first I need to double click inside the viewport, double click inside the viewport. Now we can see the scale. Go to the drop down arrow. Notice we don't have that many options. So we're going to go to customize. Okay, and then we're going to say, hey, let's reset. I want metric and imperial scales. So now it adds them. So you can see we have more options. And we hit OK. So now when I go to scale, there's more options, right? We can scroll down. Okay, so 1-to-1 is a good one. If you want to go half scale, if you think the title block and border is too tight for your drawing, you can go to half scale. See that? That's half scale. You want to use nice round numbers, 1-to-2. So the ratio 1-to-2 is half scale. If you want to go to 2-to-1, double it. 2-to-1, right? That's double the size. Obviously, that's too much. Let's go back down to 1-to-1, full scale. Actual size. Okay, and we'll be playing with this in the later videos on the handout. Okay, so now let me double click outside. Let's go back to the notes. Okay, so we already went over how to change your sheet sizes, right? Right click on any layout tab, page setup, and that'll let you change your sheet size. Okay, now let's go to viewports. Okay, so you can make a simple rectangular viewport. You can make a polygonal viewport, right? You can make a fancy one. I'm just going to do the first two. And we need to go to the layout tab. Okay, so make sure you go to the layout tab and then we'll add our own viewports. Okay, so let's go to AutoCAD. Okay, one thing that may happen is you may accidentally delete your own viewport. Okay, so it may happen, right? You accidentally delete the viewport. It's like your phone is not charged, right? You try and turn on your phone, you forgot to charge it, battery went down to 0. Oh, you got to charge it, right? In this case, we can go ahead and insert our own viewport. So make sure you go to the layout tab. Okay, so here's the layout tab. And we're going to go to viewports. Okay, if you don't see the viewports, the layout viewports panel, right click on any icon, go to panel, and make sure your viewports are on. Okay, so let's go to rectangular. Okay, so that's a simple rectangular viewport. So let's do a simple rectangular viewport, select. And it's like using the rectangle command. And there's your view, right? We're gonna take the rectangular viewport. Let's go back to the home tab and place it in the viewport layer. There it is, hit escape. You can see it's blue. Okay, so it's in the viewports layer. Okay, and you can use the grips once again to adjust it. Oh, let me double click outside. Yep, paper space. I'm gonna hit escape a few times. Looks like I had something selected, so I just hit escape to deselect. Okay, hit escape. Okay, so I'm going to go inside my viewport, double click inside, and let's go up to a full scale 1-to-1. There it is. And then we can use the mouse, hold on to the wheel to pan, center it. And you're done, and double click outside. Okay, if you want to get fancy with your viewports, by the way, you can add more than one viewport. You can add multiple viewports, especially if you have a bunch of views. Like, let's say you have an isometric view, an auxiliary view, and it's hard to fit everything with one viewport. You can focus on one area if you like. You can always use one viewport for a single view if you like. Okay, that would work for auxiliary views or an isometric view, right? Okay, so you can have more than one viewport, a viewport per view, or for all three views in this case. Okay, hit escape to deselect. Okay, so that's one way to create a viewport. Let's go ahead and delete this one. If you want to create your own custom viewport, let's go back to the layout tab. Go to viewports panel, let's go polygonal. So if you go with polygonal, you can pretty much click anywhere. So I can just follow along the periphery if I want of my title block and border. Okay, I'm gonna misclick intentionally just so we can be able to see it. There it is. I can always readjust it. And right click enter, and there's my viewport. Double click inside, make sure it's scaled 1:1. Unless you want to go with something else like 2:1 or 1:2. And I'm going to pan it over, hold on to the wheel to pan, and there it is. Okay, and then I can go back to paper space, see where you see the word model, click on it, and we're back in paper space. Okay, so those are our viewports. Okay, now a viewport, this is in the wrong layer. So let's go back to the home tab. I'll take my viewport and place it in the viewport layer, the blue one. Hit escape. Okay, so actually I can see my viewport now. Earlier I couldn't see it when it was overlapping. Title block and border, hit escape. Okay, so there's my viewport. Now typically you do want to turn off viewports. Okay, so let's say we're done. Obviously we're missing dimensions and notes, but that'll be covered in a later chapter. Okay, so one thing you do want to do is turn off your viewport layer. Watch what happens when I turn off the viewport layer. Don't blink in 3, 2, 1, don't blink. Turn it off. See, it turned off the frame of the viewport, but it did not turn off my views. Okay, so the frame has been turned off because the layer for viewports was turned off, but our 3 views did not go away. They're still there. They're part of the visible layer. Okay, so if I was to turn off the visible layer, these lines are all part of the visible layer. Are you sure you want to do this? Yeah. Okay, so it's also gone in the model space. If we go back to model space, it's gone. It's just turned off. It's okay. Let's turn it back on. There they are. Okay, go back to layout tab, and there they are. Okay, so let's continue on. Okay, so we covered viewports. I know some of this is a little bit overwhelming, but we'll keep covering this in the next few YouTube videos. Okay, so we did go over this, how to change the sheet size. Okay, so I walked you through this already, how to change the sheet size, how to adjust your scale, right? How to add more scales. And now typically you'd want to go with 1:1 as far as scale. But if this part is too tiny, then you want to go with something like 10:1. So if you're doing some electronic part, let's say for a phone, right? A small piece, you may want to increase it to 10 times, right? Use 10:1. Or maybe your part doesn't fit the sheet. If it's too large, a good example is maybe the size of your laptop or your computer. 1:1 is too large. You can go to half size or quarter size and so on. Try and use one of these standards. Okay. Sometimes I will deviate. Like I shouldn't be using 1:3, but sometimes 1:2, which is half scale, or quarter scale, 1:4. That doesn't quite do it. Then I'll use a 1:3, but I try and avoid using those odd numbers like 1:3, 1:7, right? Those are not good standards to follow, or numbers to follow. If you're using the standards, you want to use what's standardized, right? All right, so Okay, and I walked you how to create your own layer for the viewports, and I will also walk you through that in the next few videos. All right, so and let's go back to the very front, to the very beginning. And once again, title blocks, well, this should be one word, no space. Title blocks are optional. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to add a title block and border to your next assignment for chapter 4. Or let me go ahead and show you the assignments. So once again, just like the last handout, we're going to complete the 3 views. Notice it's a little bit tougher, right? So this is straight from your textbook. Some of them are in millimeters, others are in inches. So I took the problems from your textbook, and even though the author, she asks you to do this from scratch on your own using AutoCAD, I decided to start the views for you. If you want to challenge yourself and do it on your own from scratch, I'll have maybe one student that wants to do it on their own from scratch so they can practice their AutoCAD. So I'll leave it up to you if you want to use the AutoCAD files I'm providing, or if you want to start from scratch on your own. And go back and read chapter 2 and chapter 4 for some AutoCAD instruction through the textbook. Okay, so here are the other problems that we are going to be covering in our handout. And I will provide you with the solutions. Okay, so this is what it should look like once you're done creating these views in AutoCAD. And you can either upload them in Canvas or email them to me. And if you feel that after this handout, you got too much time on your hands and you need more practice, hey, go to your textbook. There's a bunch of problems in the back of the chapters. Chapter 3, Chapter 4, a bunch of problems that you can use to practice your AutoCAD skills and your orthographic projections. All right, so end of video.